Hi, my name is Danielle Holmes, and my husband and I, Peter Holmes, have been at Ninth and O for the last 5 years or so, and we've been serving in the church's college ministry for most of that 5 years. So I'm here to talk to you today a little about budgeting. Super exciting and interesting topic. I'm gonna jump right in here to show you a little clip from the Cosbys, one of my childhood TV shows, to kind of get us thinking about the topic of budgeting. So let's take a look.
Gas station, drive a bus, something like that.
So what you're saying is your mother and I shouldn't care if you get D's because you don't need good grades to be regular people.
Right.
Okay. Oh, suppose you graduate from high school. Let's say you just slide by. All right. Now you got to find a job. Now, what kind of salary do you expect for a regular person?
$250 a week.
$250 a week?
Yeah.
Sit down. I'm going to give you $300 a week. Yes, indeed. $300 a week, $1,200 a month. All right?
Great, I'll take it.
Yes, you will. And I will take $350 for taxes.
Whoa.
Huh? Yeah. Now, because see, the government comes for the regular people first. Now, how much does that leave you with?
$850.
All right. Now, you've got to have an apartment because you are not going to live here. So, an apartment in Manhattan will run you at least $400 a month.
I'll live in New Jersey.
All right. You live in New Jersey, you've got to have a car.
I'll ride a motorbike.
You need a helmet. Figure $100 a month for clothes and shoes.
Figure 200. I want to look good.
Okay, so what does that leave you with?
$200. So, no problem.
There is a problem. You haven't eaten yet.
I can get by on bologna and cereal. So, I got everything I need, plus $200 left for the month.
You plan to have a girlfriend?
For sure.
Regular people.
Well, I hope you found that clip entertaining. And now that y'all are experts in the field of budgeting, let's go ahead and jump in and have a little quick quiz. So I know the screen up the top is blocking some of the questions, so I'll do my best to read it off to you. What is the purpose of a personal budget? I'm not going to read each of these here, but you don't have to go very far to find the answer. It is A, to make a plan to organize and manage your money. Pretty simple. All right, jumping forward. What is an example of a flexible expense? So something that may change from month to month. It's not rent, property taxes, or insurance. As a matter of fact, it is C, groceries. Disposable income. It is not endless money at your disposal, believe it or not. It is B, your income minus your income taxes. So the money that you have available to spend or to save. What's the first step to creating a budget? Where do we even begin? Certainly not opening a new checking account, but we're going to figure out our average monthly income and expenses. What's going out the door, what's coming in. How much student loan debt is there as of today? A lot of big numbers there. The answer is $1.5 trillion. A lot of money. And how much money does the average American have in debt? $38,000. Yikes. All right, so jumping from our pop quiz, we're going to talk about some attitudes toward finances in our current culture. Peter and I were put a couple here in our list, but I'm sure you can think of others. I think there are two big camps. You have the spend camp. Life is short. You only live once. And then on the other end, you might have somebody saying, save everything, save everything. Who knows what the future might hold? There's some couple other ones. I deserve it. It's mine. I'm sure you can think of some others. In the Christian culture, what are some attitudes? Here are a couple that I pulled from the Gospel Coalition. God cares more about my heart than what I do with my money. Or I know I need to give, but how much does it matter so long as I give something? You can read through a couple of these or read a little bit more at the Gospel Coalition's website. Like I said, I'm not going to delve into each of these, but it's helpful for us to be thinking about what are our attitudes towards finances and how do they align with Scripture as we're working towards developing our first budget. So why is budgeting our finances important? Let's think about the answer to that question for a second. Maybe you don't think it's important. Maybe you do think it's important, but not right now. Not enough money to budget. I think one of the reasons that I think that budgeting is important is that it helps us to be able to examine where we're spending our money over time. And so it's no big deal to put out $14 for a Frappuccino and tickets to the movies. Like, no big deal. But over time, $168 is not small chunk of change, and maybe 168 is completely in line with what you have budgeted for one of these for your wants. And I'm not saying that it's good or bad, but it's helpful to know that, like, this is the amount of money that you're spending towards whether it's entertainment or meals or gas or whatever. It's super helpful to be able to know where your money's going. So there's a coffee bean game that I like to share with folks as we're talking about the topic of budgeting. I'll share it with you. If you have coffee beans, great. If you have rice or other types of, kidney beans or whatever you have on hand, something itty bitty. It's a fun game. It takes about 5 minutes to think through your priorities and where a limited amount of resources, how you can prioritize those resources. So jumping in, how do we create this budget? Where do we begin? So the flow chart below makes it look a lot more complicated than it actually is. We'll go through these steps one by one. Step 1 and step 2 are kind of reversible. You can go either which way. You can begin with considering your personal and financial goals as a way to kind of get yourself started. And it's also helpful just to kind of figure out what income you have coming in the door and what expenses you have going out the door. Simple as that. And then you're going to go ahead and create that budget for all of your expenses. You're going to monitor your expenses, so it's not something that you create, you hang up on your wall, and you don't touch it again. It is something that you're looking back to, whether on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, and figuring out, are there trends? You're going to analyze trends and review and revise. We'll talk about that a little bit more. So as we're starting out with our goals, there's a little acronym that get us thinking about what type of goals are we looking for. We want them to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. That's a mouthful. What do I mean by that? Specific. The opposite of specific would be, I'm going to save some money for college. An example of something specific would be, I'm going to set aside $50 out of every paycheck to be able to pay for books next semester, something like that. Measurable. As I mentioned, we're saying we're going to spend pull $50 out of every paycheck, and set it towards something. It's something measurable. At the end of that period of time, that you can look back and say, I either met it or I didn't meet it. It's as simple as that. Is it attainable? We're not going to write a goal that we're going to have $2 million in savings in 2 years. It's not attainable. We want something that is attainable. We want something that's relevant. If it's not important to us, we're not going to do it. Simple as that. And then lastly, it's time-based. We're looking for smaller goals that we can meet, that'll help us to reach larger goals. All right, so as we're thinking about our goals and how we prioritize our budget, let's start thinking through wants and needs. So there's a couple pictures here. It's just a fun little activity to help us get to think about what is a want, what is a need. Convertible, it's a beautiful car right there, but probably going to fall under the list of wants. Books for class, a need, at least for most classes. Chick-fil-A for dinner. Some folks might be split here. Want, need. I would probably say it falls into the category of need. Go to see Avengers Endgame or whatever the latest movie is in the theaters. Probably going to fall into the want category. Gasoline. If you're trying to figure out a way to drive to school or anywhere, gasoline's going to have to fall in that need category. Sunglasses. Everyone might be split here. Beach house. I'd say in most cases this is probably a want. Certainly not a need. All right, so we've talked about wants and needs. We're going to prioritize our wants and needs, figure out how much we're going to devote towards wants and needs. And there are a variety of different ways that folks, very smart people, suggest that you set aside how much you should set aside for wants, needs, and savings. This is one such example of many, many examples, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it because at this stage in your life, you're probably dealing with a limited amount of money, and it's probably you're probably focusing most of your budget on needs, food, school. All right, let's jump right in here to the basics of budgeting, and how do we go ahead and start this budget? Let's take a look at the clip.
More items on your to-do list than hours in the day? If you're in college, you know exactly what we're talking about. But there's one thing you should never be too busy to do, and that is taking time to make a budget. A budget is a financial plan that will help you make smart spending choices today while preparing for tomorrow. Budgeting will help you achieve your goals and prepare you for unexpected bumps in the road. So what goes into making a budget? First, you'll need to track your income and expenses for a particular period of time, such as a month. You can use pen and paper, a spreadsheet, or a budgeting app. After that, making your budget comes down to a simple equation: what you earn minus what you spend. To determine your income, include items such as wages earned at work, allowances from family, and student financial aid such as grants or scholarships. To determine your expenses, include items such as tuition, books, rent, credit card payments, and car payments. Then simply subtract your expenses from your income. Are your earnings greater than your spending? If so, you could choose to invest, buy a new cell phone, or simply save for a rainy day. But what if you spent more than you earned? If that's the case, it's time to cut back on your expenses and balance your budget. You may also need to find a way to increase your income. Remember, everyone's budget is unique and it will fluctuate from month to month, so use a budget and be mindful of your daily expenses. That way you can make sure you're spending your money on things that really matter to you. When you budget, you decide where your money goes instead of wondering where it all went. And there you have it, the basics of a budget. Now it's time to create your own. Go to studentaid.gov/budget to get started.
So I hope you found that introduction pretty helpful. I thought it was, pretty ingenious. All right, so what does a budget look like? And maybe this template below is a little bit overwhelming because it is an Excel template. But there are a variety of ways in which you can track your expenses monthly, and we'll talk about that. But again, a budget is made up of two parts. We're figuring out our income. So what is coming in the door? Are we getting money from our parents, or do we have financial awards, or do we have a job? Do we have a Etsy business? That's our income. Expenses, cell phone, insurance, tuition, meals, all that good stuff. Expenses. We're going to just write down how much is coming in, what we expect to go out the door. So some practical tips. We're going to set up a budget, and we're going to review it weekly or bi-weekly in some cases. We're going to overestimate your expenses and underestimate your income. So if we're planning to work 5 extra hours of overtime each week during the next month, we're probably going to assume that maybe we won't get scheduled for half of that overtime, so maybe we're only building half of that into the budget. So we want to assume we're going to get less, and that we're going to overstate our expenses, and assume that maybe rather than $10 in meals, we want to set $20 in meals aside for the month because we have friends regularly inviting us out. Start giving regularly at church and budget. Add it to your budget if you're not already doing so. Set aside an emergency fund and make a list ahead of time of what would define an emergency for you. Pay off debt and be wise about accumulating new debt. Be willing to invite criticism. Ask for help. Ask others how they budget. And last but not least, gain a deeper understanding of what the Bible says about money, as we talked about earlier, and our attitudes toward finances. This is a quick little chart that I just wanted to make you aware of. It's a valuable resource from Consumer Reports. It's called One Loan, 8 Ways to Pay. And if you're looking at heading to college and likely having to take on student loan debt, this is just a little helpful chart to be able to understand what the repayment plan may look like. So on this particular scenario, we're looking at a $37,000 loan over 20 years. You may be paying back $60,000. So you're going to have a large chunk of change, or if you default on your loans and it kind of drags that out a bit, you could be paying as much as $129,000 on a $37,000 loan. So anyhow, take a look at it if it's of interest to you. Consumer Reports, One Loan, 8 Ways to Pay. Managing our budget. So how do we do this? We can certainly pull out our Excel, Microsoft Excel. We can grab a little notebook, write down where we're spending our money. We can fill up some envelopes with cash. When they run out, or we can use some budgeting apps. So budgeting apps are, I think, most useful and helpful for at least our family. So we use You Need a Budget, or YNAB. That's very practical and helps us to be able to keep a close watch on our budget. There's some other ones. Mint, I know, is a free resource. Wally, Personal Capital, Pocket Card. There's some other ones, new ones coming out all the time. So I'll give you a little introduction to YNAB, and maybe this is not an app you will choose. It'll kind of give you an idea of how these apps typically work. So let's take a look.
Tired of stressing about money? Of course you are. You need a budget. And you're in luck. That's all we do. In fact, it's so simple, we can tell you how it works in 68 seconds. And we already used 8. Make that 10. Okay, here's how it works. You'll start by defining what's most important to you. Good stuff. See, budgeting isn't so bad. No one should tell you what to spend your money on. Only you know what matters most. But your budget will keep you and your money crazy focused on your goals. Every time you get paid, before you spend a dime, you'll give every dollar a job. Ta-da! You have a budget. Now whenever you spend money, there's no guessing, no guilt. You plan for this. And when your phone dies, you plan for that too. And by plan, we mean save. Money in the bank. But you don't have a crystal ball. There will be surprises. No worries, things change and your budget can too. No more counting down the days until your next paycheck. But when it comes, you guessed it, you're in the driver's seat. Give those dollars jobs. On average, new budgeters save $200 in their first month, and your first 34 days are free. You don't have to be a math genius to know that's a win. So just sign up. You have nothing to lose, except all that stress.
So that's my pitch for YNAB. I think they have either a free or pretty cheap version for students. So I hope that is useful to you. All right, so we've created our budget. We're not letting it sit. We're gonna keep looking back at it. Maybe we need to make changes in the budget. Maybe we're not allocating enough for meals and entertainment. Maybe we're spending or budgeting too much for haircuts or whatever the case may be. And then we're going to analyze trends. We're going to look back at our budget, maybe the last couple of months, and we're going to ask ourselves, is my spending marked by Christian generosity? What does my spending say about what makes me most happy? Does my spending suggest I'm collecting for this life? Is my spending explicitly supporting the spread of the gospel? Is my spending so cautious that it's captured my heart and keeps me from loving those close to me well? And if you want to read more about this, take a look at the article by Marshall Siegel at Desiring God. All right, that's it. I hope you enjoyed my little introduction to budgeting. Happy to answer any questions at any time. And I hope this has encouraged you to go ahead, start writing those goals, writing the income and expenses, and go ahead, take a stab at building your first budget. Have a great week, everyone.